Iki Kurogane, a teenager recognized as the worst one at his school for his lack of skill, gets ready for his usual morning training. In another location, Stella Vermilion, the princess of the Vermilion Kingdom, is seen arriving in Japan to enroll at Hagen Academy. After completing his training, Iki heads back to his room and unexpectedly walks in on Stella, and the situation worsens when Iki badly attempts to retaliate by stripping down himself. Iki is subsequently called to the director's office, where Kurono chases him for his inappropriate behavior before bringing Stella in so that Iki can formally apologize to her. However, Stella insists that Iki perform harakiri as a form of apology, much to Iki's dismay, who accidentally exclaims that he won't take his own life just for seeing Stella in that state. Infuriated by Iki's remark, Stella begins to generate flames, prompting Kurono to exit the office to avoid any involvement. In a moment of desperation, Iki declares that he was enchanted by Stella's beauty, which surprises her and causes her flames to diminish due to shyness. As Iki attempts to clarify the situation again, Kurono returns to disclose that both Iki and Stella are roommates, leaving them both astonished. Kurono then escorts the two to their shared room and explains the reasons behind their roommate arrangement, which displeases Stella as she imposes more unreasonable demands on Iki. To resolve the situation, Kurono presents them with the option of settling the matter through a duel, which ultimately escalates into a contest where the loser becomes a lifelong slave to the winner, as per Stella's demand following Iki's offhand comment that the victor would remain unknown until the actual fight. Later, Stella is shown preparing for her match against Iki while reflecting on her efforts to master her powers, feeling frustrated by others perceiving her solely as someone with talent. Meanwhile, at the battle arena, Iki is seen discussing his graduation terms with Kurono, which includes winning the 7 Stars Sword Art Festival. Subsequently, Stella arrives at the arena, and their match officially commences as both parties summon their respective devices. Stella initiates the duel with a fierce attack, but Iki continuously counters her moves, managing to mimic Stella's sword techniques and nearly striking her. While lamenting her undesired method of winning, Stella unleashes one of her most powerful attacks, Catharterio Salamandra, as a sign of respect towards Iki. Iki openly recognizes his shortcomings as a mage knight and reveals his secret technique, Ito Shura, which forcibly removes all of his physical limitations, significantly enhancing his abilities. By evading all of Stella's assaults, Iki successfully strikes Stella, securing his victory in the duel before collapsing from exhaustion. Stella is then shown in the hospital room, receiving care, and Kurono arrives at her bedside. Stella asks Kurono how Iki could possibly be an F-rank knight, to which Kurono clarifies that the ranking system is determined by the Blazers' abilities rather than their actual combat skills. Stella subsequently enters her room to discover Iki asleep on one of the beds. Stella climbs onto Iki and starts to explore him, becoming surprised at her initial contact with a man. She then hits her head after Iki wakes up to see what she was doing. Stella engages in conversation with Iki and expresses her regret for misjudging him when she hardly knew him. Iki smiles and reminds Stella of her obligation to him. Iki then instructs Stella to become his roommate. Stella consents, and they both fist bump, pledging to make their arrangement successful. Stella and Iki are then depicted having just completed their daily 20 kilometers run together. Iki offers Stella a sip from his bottle, who is initially taken aback by the offer since it would constitute an indirect kiss. Stella ultimately accepts it, while Iki expresses his enthusiasm about his sister's arrival at the school. Yuri Oreki, the homeroom teacher, presents herself to all of the freshmen and Iki. Yuri reminds the class that this year's involvement in the 7 Sword Art Festival will rely on winning selection battles and nothing else, and that they will be notified through their student IDs. Yuri then encourages her students to engage in the selection battles, and shortly after, she suddenly starts vomiting blood and collapses. Yuri is then seen in the infirmary alongside Stella and Iki. Iki explains to Stella that Yuri was the reason he could attend school initially. Yuri also comments on how unfortunate the previous year was. Iki and Stella stroll through the hallway, and Stella inquires about what transpired last year. Iki explains that he was unable to attend classes last year, and just before he could elaborate, a girl named Kagami appears and hugs him, making Stella feel jealous and walk off. Iki pursues her as the silver-haired girl appears, and Iki recognizes her as Shizuku, his sister. Shizuku then kisses him on the lips, startling everyone around, including Iki and Stella. Stella interrupts before Shizuku can kiss Iki again, which angers Shizuku due to the interruption. Stella clarifies that she interrupted because she was Iki's servant and also pointed out that they had shared the same bed. Shizuku then opts to deploy her device, Yoshigure, intending to eliminate Stella. Stella counters by deploying her device, leading to a clash that results in an explosion in the hallway. The two receive punishment in the form of cleaning duty for their actions. After they complete the cleaning, Shizuku and Stella continue to bicker, leading Shizuku to inadvertently mention Ikki's past and how it felt as if he didn't matter to his family. Shizuku then concludes the conversation as she heads to her room. Shizuku is then greeted back to her room by her roommate, Nagi. Stella then encounters Ikki outside in front of the school, where she asks him if his family treated him as if he never existed. Ikki chooses to reveal the truth and describes how his family has treated him over the years. One day, Ikki reached his breaking point and decided to flee during a severe snowstorm. Just as he was about to collapse, Ryoma, his grandfather, appeared to him, urging him not to lose hope while he carried him back home. Ikki goes on to explain that his family even pressured the school to ensure he failed so that Ikki could never become a knight. While Ikki and Stella are conversing, Shizuku speaks with her roommate and shares Ikki's circumstances and how she found out about them. Shizuku then expresses her determination to provide Ikki with the love of a father, mother, brother, and sister. Ikki is later seen in the hot tub, and Stella enters offering to wash him. Ikki feels hesitant, but Stella emphasizes that a servant must serve her master. Ikki finds himself in a bad situation. As she washes his back, Stella inquires if Ikki likes hers. Ikki confesses that he does like big round things. Ikki wishes to move, but Stella does not want him to. Her wear falls to the floor, prompting her to look at her, causing her to blush. Ikki notices the swimsuit and assumes that Stella is, but before that, angered, Stella slaps Ikki. Ikki and Stella are observed training against one another. Once the training session concluded, Ikki discovers that Stella is set to battle against Momotani. Ikki attempted to inform Stella about her opponent, but she declined his assistance because she believes these competitions serve as practice for actual fights, where it would be impossible to anticipate the opponent's skills. The first bell rang for class, and before returning to class, Stella attempted to ask Ikki out but was interrupted by a message from Shizuku, to which Ikki replied positively. It is revealed that Ikki agreed to go out with Shizuku, along with Nagi and Stella, who invited herself to join. The 4 Hagen Academy students head to the mall. After seeing Shizuku hold hands with Ikki, Stella tries to do the same, but is unsuccessful due to Shizuku's interruption. While the students were relishing their day, mall security was infiltrated by terrorists. At the mall, the students are later seen enjoying some snacks, and Shizuku felt embarrassed when Ikki reached out to wipe cream off her face. Stella attempted to have Ikki do the same for her, but ended with different outcomes. Nagi and Ikki go to the restroom alone, where Ikki observes that Shitsuku typically does not open up to others, yet she has been very close to him and thanked him for being her friend. Nagi then comments that Ikki perfectly fits the description of being very strong and kind, but also makes an ambiguous remark. Nagi then hushes Ikki as 2 terrorists rush into the restroom, with one immediately firing his gun upon entry. Ikki and Nagi, however, are nowhere in sight. As the terrorists exit, Nagi and Ikki emerge from a different dimension, curious to understand what was happening, and Nagi reveals his device, Darkness Hermit, explaining he can navigate through the shadows. Ikki and Nagi subsequently appear in the security room, where they find the 2 security guards unconscious. Ikki contacts Kurono, who informs Ikki that the situation has already made the news, and the police have surrounded the mall, clarifying that the terrorist group is named Rebellion, which comprises individuals who believe Blazers represent a new type of human and have attacked the mall, demanding a hefty ransom for the hostages. Stella and Shizuku are shown with the hostages, and Shizuku advises Stella not to take any action as she has devised a plan. At that moment, a mother is pleading with one of the terrorists to spare her son, but her cries go unheard as the terrorist attempts to kill the boy. However, Stella makes her entrance and saves him. Bisho, the leader of the group, appears and starts to scold his subordinate, but then has a sudden change of heart and turns his weapon on the mother instead. Stella attempts to rescue the mother, but Bisho manages to thwart her and uses her own power against her with his device. He then threatens the mother to try and force Stella to kneel and apologize without her clothes on, which infuriates Ikki, who is observing from the balcony above. Ikki attempts to rush down to Stella before she can undress further, but Nagi's Shadowbind stops him, revealing that Shizuku is currently creating a water barrier unnoticed, at which point Shizuku activates Shoha Suiren. Bisho commands his subordinates to shoot the hostage. He then spots Ikki and tries to shoot him but fails as Ikki draws his device and employs his 7-sword technique, Reiko, to sever one of Bisho's arms. Ikki then restrains Bisho, while his subordinates are knocked out by Stella. However, Bisho still has one more subordinate hiding among the hostages, who threatens to hold a woman hostage again unless Nagi frees Bisho. Just then, another Hagen Academy Blazer arrives, manages to incapacitate both the subordinate and Bisho, thus saving everyone. A figure appears who Ikki identifies as Kirihara, who seems familiar to Ikki as well. The students exit the mall, and both Shizuku and Stella express their dislike for Kirihara, who is currently being admired by girls. Ikki, however, expresses his gratitude for Kirihara's intervention. In response, Kirihara mockingly labels Ikki as weak, prompting Stella to argue that it is Kirihara who is the weaker one compared to Ikki. Kirihara merely laughs and asserts that Ikki is the one who is too frightened to confront him in battle. Kirihara then instructs Ikki to check his student handbook, where it is revealed that Kirihara will be Ikki's first opponent in the selection battle. Kirihara concludes by departing, calling Ikki the worst while leaving.
Momotani and Stella engaged in a fight, but Momotani surrendered because he was terrified of being engulfed by Stella's flames before he could even hit Stella with a single blow. As Stella is showering in the locker room, Shizuku and Nagi discuss how simple her match was, and reveal that both she and Nagi had also won their first matches. Nagi and Kagami soon get along, as they both like gossip, and then Kagami barges in wanting to interview the 3 first-year students. As Kirihara was about to use one of his arrows to bring down the defenseless girl in one of his matches, Ikki had mistakenly pictured himself in her shoes. Then Stella walks in, and they discuss Kirihara's skills, area invisibility, and capacity to fire arrows at blazers from a secure location. Stella is concerned about Ikki, but he comforts her by telling her that he will triumph. After that, Ikki goes on a run, where he runs into Nagi, who is curious about the history between him and Kirihara, since he is aware that there had been some kind of bloodshed between them. As he was telling Nagi the tale, Ikki remembered his first year at Hagun Academy. At the time, the head of the Kurogane family had ties to the school's principal, and the principal was seeking a cause to have him expelled, during which he encountered Kirihara, a fellow freshman, who suggested that they engage in combat so that the faculty may acknowledge Ikki's fighting prowess. Even though Ikki declined his offer, Kirihara kept shooting arrows at him and would not let up. Back in the present, Ikki informs Nagi that he believed he would be kicked for succumbing to temptation, and that he was unable to defend himself in any manner. Ikki then tells Nagi that he would keep trying to demonstrate his strength regardless of the circumstances, prompting Nagi to respond by saying that he is accustomed to being wounded and that he wishes Ikki would find someone who can understand the screams in his heart. Ikki registers for the selection battle the following day, and Nene Saikyo, who was struck by his lack of hesitation in signing the registration form, as so many others do, approaches him. When Nene quickly narrows the distance between her and Ikki, Ikki realizes that Nene is a formidable opponent and immediately offers Ikki private instruction. But Kurono breaks in and pulls Nene away from Ikki so she may resume her responsibilities as the match commentator. Ikki then attempts to concentrate in the waiting area. He shuts his eyes and considers all that has happened in the days prior to this, growing increasingly anxious as he does so, and suddenly it is time for his game. The announcer introduces Ikki and Kirihara, and as the buzzer signals the start of the match, both Kirihara and Ikki pull out their guns. Starting to shoot his arrows at Ikki, Kirihara calls forth a forest. The moment Kirihara shoots an arrow, Ikki can determine its trajectory and pinpoint his location. Kirihara then chooses to play a game with Ikki, in which he will announce where he intends to shoot Ikki. At the start of his game, he reveals that he has the ability to conceal his arrows in his region of invisibility, and that he can easily defeat Ikki. Then we see Stella, Shizuku, and Nagi in the stands observing. Nagi tells Stella that Ikki's nerves were getting to him, and that he was unable to use his method from the start of the game because of it. After that, Kirihara starts to make fun of Ikki, making fun of his necessity to win the Sword Art Festival in order to graduate as he fires arrows at him from all directions. With Kirihara at the helm, the audience joins in on his ridicule of Ikki and begins to chant "Worst One," which only serves to demoralize him more. Stella, growing increasingly enraged by the jeers and insults, eventually breaks up the chanting and urges Ikki to stand up and defend himself against Kirihara. As Ikki turns on his noble art, Itu Shura, Kirihara then chooses to target his brain. Kirihara fires his arrow, but Ikki, who correctly predicted that he would aim for his chest rather than his brain, catches it, which makes Kirihara fear. Ikki's ability to comprehend the rationale behind his opponent's strategies and apply it against them was dubbed perfect vision, according to Nene. Kirihara, frightened, unleashes all of his weapons against Ikki, including his Million Rain technique, but to no avail since Ikki was aware of the location of his arrow as well as he was. Kirihara is terrified of being cut, so he concedes defeat to Ikki before he can strike him. Ikki halts his assault just before slicing Kirihara, adding that he missed his target by millimeters, and that there may be a chance to prevent a cut on Kirihara with more training. Ikki's victory is announced by the commentator. Ikki is then transported to the hospital bed for medical care after he falls down. 2 days later in the hospital, Stella is dozing next to Ikki's bed when he awakens. In her role as Stella, she is discomfited by Iki witnessing her drool. Stella had calmed down, but Iki had still wanted to let her know that he liked her as well. However, Stella prevents him and instructs him to shut his eyes. She kisses him on the cheek after he does it. In response, Iki hugs her, and they both pledge to compete in the Sword Art Festival's finals.